Okay, everyone, I'm just going to make my introductory remarks. I'm Sarah Bacon, founder of the #RespectBI Coalition for Moped Reform. Thank you for tuning in to yet another Zoom on a summer weeknight. Not an ideal time, I know, but I think we all agree on the urgent need for a better relationship between mopeds and this island. As of last night, the tally for moped accidents this summer was 55 between dispatch calls and medical center walk-ins, July 1st to the present. That is compared to 34 accidents last year between Memorial Day and Labor Day. That's an increase of 62% in less time, a significant increase. Some people have asked me why I started this movement. I've asked myself that as well. But in short, I love this island. Professionally, I've designed campaigns around public interest issues for a living. I also have a master's in sustainability management and care deeply about the long-term balance of communities, of Block Island, of every community, from an economic, social, and environmental standpoint. But that's enough about me. I want to thank our panelists for lending their time to share their points of view on our island's long history with mopeds and potential paths forward. Tonight's discussion needs to be a respectful exchange of perspectives and solutions. There are many of you on this call. At current count, I see 139. So to maintain order, I want to explain our format. Panelists will each give a 3 to 5 minute statements. Please submit questions for the panelists via the Q&A function on the Zoom call, okay? Name who you are and for whom your question is directed. I then will articulate those questions to the panelists. After we've finished questions for the panelists, we will open up the Zoom to public discussion. In that portion of the call, please digitally raise your hand and we will unmute you for public comments. This is a place to share concerns, ideas, solutions. This meeting is an opportunity. It will be recorded. It is being recorded. It's an opportunity to get all ideas on the table from as wide a sampling of our community as we could rally. And we want to start with a broad discussion. So everyone has a voice, and this is all public record because it is being recorded. But just to make note, public dialogue will be conducted by audio only. You will only be able to see myself and the panelists. I've received hundreds of excellent moped reform ideas from you all, and I really hope you'll take this opportunity to express those ideas publicly tonight. That is the goal of this meeting. And then everything discussed tonight and sent to me via email privately will then be reviewed and considered by a core group for moped reform proposals moving forward, and then ultimately presented. Several of those will be presented as recommendations to the new town manager, Marianne Crawford, who RespectBI very much looks forward to working with. Again, this meeting is being recorded. It's for public record. Channel 10, Channel 12, and Channel 6 are covering this evening, along with the Providence Journal and the Boston Globe. So just checking in to see if we now have our esteemed police chief online. Thank you. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'm sure everyone on the call knows Dr. Thomas Warcup, Medical Director and CEO of the Block Island Medical Center. Thank you, Dr. Warcup, for kicking us off.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for organizing this, Sarah, and I think it's a terrific topic for us to contemplate. Moped accidents certainly have been a real continued challenge to the medical staff and on Block Island for many years now. The challenges come in multiple ways for us. We have first the severity of injury. A 50cc engine can produce about a 40 to 45 mile an hour rate. That's just for reference. You can think about the injuries that that could create. complete disruption to other patients being seen because of the severity, needing to be immediately evaluated. Certainly emotionally frustrating for us to manage a full clinic schedule and then dealing with preventable injuries that 20% of the time require trauma center evaluation that may not be achievable based on the weather here at Block Island. So therefore, this evolution takes 1 to 3 hours trying to arrange other transport, and how disruptive that can be to an organization. And it's hard to imagine that any business that has injuries that generate healthcare entity evaluations requiring 20% of those to be trauma evaluations are not more regulated overall. And you're right, to date, 55 moped accidents. We didn't have any today. We've had 11 transfers to trauma centers, so that's 20%. It would be 22% if we count the 1 fatality that would have gone to a trauma center. So we've had 11 transfers and 1 fatality out of the 55 moped accidents that come to the medical center. Never mind the ones that happen out in the community that never really reach any of these terminal points. So certainly Block Island Health Center would ask the town council to support a fund from moped owners to help us fund additional medical providers that could give us additional support during June through August to deal with these types of traumas. So they're both very disruptive for us emotionally and physically, and many of them, in our opinions, are preventable, given the fact that many of these are people not wearing closed-toed shoes and they have significant skin injuries. We have multiple open fractures. We have passengers on a 2-person moped that creates increasing severity of injury. And we look forward to a dialogue that possibly could give us long-standing improvements in how to keep people more safe on Block Island, both pedestrians as well as those individuals renting the mopeds. I have to say that for the entire staff, this season's been tough. It's been personally tough for me to make 2 phone calls to parents. One with the terrible NVA that we had a couple weeks ago, and then one to a parent just about the moped accident. That's terrible, and I hope not to make any more.
Thank you, Dr. Warcup. That's sobering data, and thank you for yours and your team's work, steadfast work for visitors and our community. I'd like to now open up the audio for Chief Carlone for your statement. Chief Carlone. Are you there? I see you. You need to unmute yourself, Chief Carlone.
Sarah, he might have to push *6.
There you are. Are you there?
He's muted, so he'll have to do #6 to unmute. Or
Chief Carlone, if you could hit #6 to unmute, please.
Or I'm sorry, it's *6.
*6 to unmute, please.
There it goes.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for joining us, and really I apologize for the technical difficulties, Chief.
It's probably all my fault. I'm not much of a technical person. Thank you.
I wondered if you could just give a 3 to 5 minute statement on your perspective of you've proposed so many great ideas on how to address this problem on different platforms. How does this summer compare to previous summers? What are long-term solutions that we ought to be considering that might not be in place now? And a general status report, please, from your department. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Basically, I saw this coming as early as February, and I put it in writing, and I said it at every Zoom meeting. This was easy to see coming. So basically what we have is a summer that is an anomaly here. We've had families. We've had good luck here. We've had all nice people coming off. This was a change in demographics that was actually easy to see without getting into the details. Hopefully this is a one-time event. We need to get the families back here. That's what I will say to you. I get calls every day of people that I know say we're not coming there, and I tell them, why not? This is a very safe place. Don't listen to all this. This is a great place. So basically what happened here is we have a lot of kids And we are not equipped as a police department. You know, my average staff for the day shift is, the average age is 60 years old. I have 3 officers injured in fights. One needs surgery, but he's hanging in there because he's loyal to me. He's not leaving. He said, I'm going to hang in there, but really we have to be careful. So we have a great patrol division. We've taken many people off with mental illness, never a fight with them, talked them into coming, never hurt one of them. We've done great patrol operations. We've solved crimes, all the things you don't see that we're doing, and we're busy all day long. What we do not have is a traffic division. And that is the biggest problem facing Block Island. And I put this in writing many times. This needs to be a separate traffic division to deal with this. And that's why, fortunately, I have Colonel Manny, who's concerned about this from the state police, who loves Block Island. And he helped us start our program here. I go back many years with him. And he is going to be sending, I think, like 8 troopers over to the rest of the year to get this place under control. And this is not a moped problem. This is an everything problem. These roads were not designed. When this place was built 400 years ago, nobody could ever have anticipated thousands of people descending upon this place with all manner of transportation and walking. So this is a congestion traffic problem. We need to have everybody behaving politely, driving politely. Everybody, not just mopeds. They are a problem. They've been like a carnival. We had a meeting with the moped operators tonight, earlier from this meeting. It was like a carnival gone bad. And this needs to stop. And I have a plan for that they will fund. The town of New Shoreham should not have to fund a private business. They should fund it. And I'm going to put that plan forward. And that's what I would suggest for you to do. Thank you.
Chief Carlone, could you share that plan with us on this call?
Yes. Well, partly what it will be. Okay, I'm going to take you back 16 or 17 years. I was the police chief. Ballard's was considered a big problem. Okay. We took them to a show cause hearing on their liquor license. Basically, as a result of that show cause hearing, I asked for private security there. I said, I'm not going in there with my officers. You guys are making the money. Bring your own private security. I'll come in after they deal with things. And they put 8 officers in there. And as busy as it is, those private security officers take care of 90% of the problems there. We've only made a few arrests with hundreds of thousands of people going through there. So the moped operators, who have been cooperative, I have to say, they bought all the street signs for us. It was probably $10,000 or $15,000. They've done what we've asked them to do. Here's what happened this year. We had a different demographic come, and it's like a carnival ride. It's disgusting. So they need to provide their own private security all throughout the island. And when they're acting up, they need to call in the license plate. The mopeds are stopped. Take the keys. I've done this 100 times. I take the keys right off them and make them walk home. And they need to call in the mopeds and get rid of those type of people. A lot of people here drive them politely, couples and whatnot, but we cannot have kids coming here and thinking it's a carnival ride. So we need to put the security upon them, not the town of New Shoreham. And they're willing to do it. That's the good news.
Thank you for that, Chief. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, I'd like to add that the first step would really be important that everybody here drive politely. I mean, come on, people are on their cell phones, they're texting, they're going through stop signs. This isn't just mopeds. The big trucks are driving too fast. Maybe if we all, 50% of the problem would be corrected if we all just obeyed the rules. Don't you agree?
I think that there's a spectrum of bad behavior.
Exactly.
We're all
And
guilty
we have
of it at some points, but I do feel moped renters are the most egregious demographic in that department.
They absolutely are, but good behavior follows good behavior. So if everybody from here decides to follow the rules, we can just focus on the mopeds and not everybody else.
Chief, I see that Dr. Warcup wanted to respond to one of your remarks.
I think the chief is right in many ways. I would just add to one part of it is not everybody has the competency to obey the rules correctly. Some of the people that we see often are either inebriated or they really never had the competency skills to even ride a two-wheeled vehicle. So I agree with you that if they obey the rules, it would be helpful. But I'm not so sure all of them have the capacity to even do so. But yet,
No,
still have,
Doctor,
but yet still have the moped.
you're exactly right. I'm not talking about mopeds. I'm saying we could correct a percentage of the problem just by our community getting together and obeying the traffic rules in cars, trucks. And I'll tell you something else. How do we have a rule that some people get to ride without helmets and others have to have them on? Do you think that presents an enforcement problem for us?
Well, I will add that has been proposed.
Hold on.
Go ahead,
People
please.
see people without helmets on and they go, wow, we don't have to wear them. How do you think that goes toward 3 60-year-old people trying to control this problem with police uniforms on?
Well, it's certainly true that congestion is a large issue that also has to be addressed. The number of cars on the islands. A friend the other day lives between 2 rental homes, each of which and each house has 4 cars at it, each rental house. So that is another topic of conversation. We're going to stick to mopeds tonight. Thank you very much, Chief Carlone. I'm going to move on.
Hold on. Wait a minute. I'm talking about mopeds. 50% of the people, if they own them, don't have to wear helmets. The people that come here renting them do. We're talking about mopeds.
Well, I know that private operators don't have to wear helmets now, and that actually was a recommendation Respect BI made to the town council yesterday, one that could have been an immediate action. And I think this is a good segue to your point, Chief, for Sven Risom to address. He is a town councilor and a concerned citizen and owner of Northlight Fibers. Thank you, Chief. If you would stay on the line for questions after every panelist has spoken, I'd be very grateful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sven, take it away.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me. And as you just sort of mentioned, I'm really speaking as a concerned citizen and happy to participate in the process. As some of you know, or many of you know, I'm also on the town council, but I'm not here to speak for or represent or even talk as a town councilor. And as you mentioned a few minutes ago about another potential panelist, they were in a meeting about some discussions. And so I'm going to have to be very careful about what one does or doesn't talk about. The reason I'm here is because I really want to focus, just like I think everybody else on the call, about how to make Block Island that, I'm going to call it the lovely place that Laura and I moved here to be in over 10 years ago. And as Sarah, you and Michael and his letter and the editor, which I thought was very, very good, as everybody's talked about, I think that there have been some challenges to that loveliness, especially this past year. And I think we've talked about it. A few comments, I think, and I'm not sure how much everybody knows, and we're not going to go into any detail here, but this is a discussion, as many people on the phone know, that's really well over a 35-year-old discussion. In 1986, there was a Rhode Island Superior Court of Rhode Island, Washington County ruling. There have been ordinances, United States District Court for the District of Rhode Island, settlement extensions. There are 5-year settlements. So it's a very complex, very complicated, very legally entwined dialogue. And we're not going to get into that tonight by any means. But I think it's important for everybody to realize this isn't, and I will compare it to, a town ordinance on outdoor entertainment, which is a license that the town issues. And that's a different kind of legal parameter that maybe the town has. One of the things that I've talked to Sarah about this that I think is so exciting about this meeting, and I really implore the group to think along some lines like this. For those who know, the Committee for the Great Salt Pond was formed by a group of, very similar without Zoom, but a group of people. John Brotherhood, for those who knew him, was just an amazing gentleman and great family. And a number of other people started this organization, and they were concerned about development on the island and especially around the Great Salt Pond. And they organized a group. They did it in a very specific way. They then partnered with conservation groups, and it was all about managing development and how do you balance between commercial, recreational, and environmental. And those three elements come together, not stopping any one thing, but creating that balance, much like you talked about a few minutes ago, Sarah, of a safer Block Island. Given that formation and the partnership with the town, the partnership with the Land Trust, the partnership with the Nature Conservancy and the Block Island Conservancy, many developmental efforts have been stopped. For example, Deadeyes, for those who do or don't know, is owned by the Ranowskis, and that was originally purchased to be a major ferry terminal in and out of the Great Salt Pond with ferries. That was stopped. Champlin's, which would have increased its footprint 3 times, I mean, just a massive change to that area of the pond, has been over an 11-year battle. I think there was $500,000 well spent by the committee and town, and then matched by the town and other groups. So I think here we're seeing a tremendous groundswell. I will say that the groundswell today, there were groundswells in the past, and there are many people on the phone tonight or on the Zoom call tonight that can talk about this in a lot of detail because they were part of it. But there have been groundswells in the past, and the question is how to formulate a group that can then work across organizations that's data-based and fact-based. So let me give you the example that is just timely because it's discussed tonight. Dr. Warcup, and by the way, Dr. Warcup, thank you and the health services and all the first responders, because it's been traumatic to say the least, but thank you for organizing. He mentioned last night and then again today, 55 moped accidents. And then the one fatality, 55 moped accidents to the medical center. The key thing about that number that's so good is it goes all the way. So when people come in with road rash or they come in with a burn or something else that doesn't necessarily get picked up by the rescue squad. So his number is significantly higher than the rescue squad. The number 34, Sarah, that you mentioned in 2019 was a rescue squad number. So it's not quite easy to match those as apples and apples because they really aren't. I believe Dr. Warcup would tell you that in 2019, there were 52 people that were treated during the whole year, key point, during the whole year in 2019. And as of today, I guess, there have been 55 this year. Point being, and the year's not done. So it's clearly more than last year, and we'll sort of see where it goes. So I just want to make sure that it's data-based and fact-based, and I won't use the word science, but anyway.
Thank you for correcting me, Sven. I also just want to add that there's anecdotal accounts from many residents who have seen accidents happen that where the rescue dispatch is not called at all. And in fact, moped operators show up on the scene to brush off the people who, fell off their bikes, and those never get reported.
Of course. And they never go to the medical center, right? They never go to the medical center, et cetera. So, exactly. So I guess my point would be that probably there's maybe a little increase in this year and that, but that's probably constant throughout the years. But you're right. So I think from my point of view, what I'm so excited about this group, the reason I told Sarah I'd love to talk about it is, I think the formulation of an organization that can really go across the town, the first responders, state, and really start to bring this into different directions is an exciting thing. There are, as anybody who knows who listened last night, there are sort of 6 areas that I'm very interested in pursuing. They are hours of, just repeating last night, hours of operation, number of mopeds per license that are operational. Right now it's 34. Minimum age of drivers, number of riders on a moped, location of the location of the rentals relative to the license location, safety warnings, these stickers, and I will say, I did use the term last night, significantly enhanced training. And Martha Ball, I thought, pointed out really well, which is, no, let's get some testing. So it's not just training, it's testing. And how do you make sure that the person can actually make a turn and accelerate at the same time without losing control? This is a very complex legal discussion. There are things that are more inbounds than out of bounds as far as the town goes, but we then need to lobby with the state. We need to lobby with the legislature. And as you know, that takes time, but it also takes focus and energy. So I guess in closing, my hope is that we can all work together, we meaning all of us as citizens, to make this the place that Laura and I moved to and that we love. And I don't want to say bring it back or make America great again, because I'm not going to that area. And work across, and really the first responders. So to the rescue squad, to the fire department, to the police department, medical center, I really personally thank you. And I hope that the conversation continues excitingly tonight. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Sven. I hope you'll stick around in case there are questions. John Leone was in the lineup to speak next. He was in a meeting, called to a meeting with lawyers and unable to come. So Lisa Sprague, please take over. You are an EMT for 40 years. You were former captain of the rescue squad. You're a veteran at trauma treatment. And I thank you for sharing your perspective with us tonight.
You may change your mind about that in a minute. But thank you for the opportunity to be part of this discussion once again. Well, now that the inevitable has happened, a young man died in the street on Block Island as a result of injuries sustained in a tragic moped accident. This was totally preventable. This was a totally preventable tragedy, and the irony of this forum being advertised one day before this incident speaks volumes to the enormous public concern over this topic. I don't believe that there is anyone on the island who has fought the moped battle longer than I. I've been a member of the rescue squad for 44 years, with 42 of those years as a very active member and a licensed EMT, and the last 2 years as a reserve member acting as a rescue assistant and only responding when extra hands or an ambulance driver are needed. I also served for many years as a public safety dispatcher and ended my career as a town employee by retiring in December of 2019 as the administrative assistant to the police department. Because I have spent most of my life committed to public safety, I feel that I can speak knowledgeably to the rental moped issue, which in my opinion can be considered a public health and safety crisis on Block Island. We're currently having the same moped discussion that started in 1984. What's wrong with this picture? 37 or more years of having our sensibilities insulted and our finite resources depleted from the constant seasonal aggravation that is the rental mopeds. And I do stress the rental mopeds, where lack of experience on a motorized two-wheeled conveyance plays a huge role in the incidence of accidents. I speak from being witness to hundreds of moped accident scenes and seeing visitors' trips to the island completely ruined by often life-threatening injuries. I speak as one of the public safety dispatchers who for decades dealt with the adrenaline rushes from dealing with the frantic 911 callers who witnessed or came upon a moped accident. I speak as the former administrative assistant to the police department, from having to deal with insurance companies and lawyers as those injured parties try to come to grips with their rehabilitation after a moped accident on Block Island. None of this was necessary, and it could have all been prevented. Since the early 1980s, our community has been bullied and held hostage by a handful of businesses who, in my observation, don't seem to care about our home or our visitors. We have met ad nauseum over the years and tried compromising, deal making, and dealing with unkept promises. It's not working. Take the rental mopeds out of the equation and see how the quality of life improves. Going forward, I would also encourage the town to examine controlling motorized scooters, motorized skateboards, segways, etc., because it's only a matter of time before the next fatality occurs. I conclude by stating that moped rentals are big business for very few. They would not fight so tenaciously if it were not very profitable for them, when in reality, the actual monetary cost to the town's infrastructure and the emotional cost to the volunteer first responders and the medical center is overwhelming. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Lisa. Really appreciate it. I think this is a good segue to Alan Davis, who was a contingent New Shoreham police officer for many years and also is a traffic and crash expert. Alan, thank you for joining us today. You've been quite vocal with recommendations on how we can improve the situation. I'm hoping you'll share those with our attendees. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a data guy. I was a Cranston police officer for 20 years. I was out on the island as a summer officer for 5 or 6. Everything that I say today does not reflect the views of the New Shoreham police or the Cranston police, and they're my own personal views, just for my disclaimer. Back in 2015, we started a research paper, and in late in the season in 2015, I submitted a 85-page report that covered virtually every single item that we've discussed here in the last 15 minutes and how to improve upon those issues to make the island safer. Everything from the engineering of the roads, where the Rhode Island DOT came out and did what's called an RSA, a roadside safety assessment. They've done that twice now. They made the same recommendations both times because the town has taken very little to no action on the 2 previous RSAs that were done. Just as a side note to that, and getting the town to cooperate, right now it's no mopeds on High Street. In the end of 2015, we had signs made to help guide the mopeds around, and one sign in particular said dead end for mopeds on High Street. All mopeds use Spring Street. That was 2015. The sign lasted 1 day. A business owner on High Street made complaints to multiple people. The sign was removed, and we've had multiple major crashes on High Street going up and down the hill over the years. I am a recognized expert in accident investigation at almost every level of the court. I run my own company, doing work for consultant work for law firms and insurance companies. I could be here giving you data 1 minute. If another insurance company calls me or someone else that's affiliated with the moped issue can call me, the data that I generate is available to everybody. I don't take sides. Looking at the data, you've got to compare it to something. And up until this point, no one has made the comparison that makes the numbers in a ratio relative to something else. What I did was I compared them to the landing fees received by the town at the end of the summer. So I had an idea how many visitors came to the island. I don't know what the current number of visitors is in comparison to the other years, but when the numbers all seem to run relatively the same up until this year. This year appears to be an outlier in the total number of crashes. When I did my study, we looked at the crashes that required the city services to go out and respond. I didn't look at the ones that walked in and were treated at the rescue building. I didn't look at the ones treated at the medical center. I looked at the ones that were putting the burden on police, fire, and first aid. Dr. Warcup, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting in person, but his predecessor, Dr. Clark, was very, very helpful in looking at why are we flying so many people off the island? Do we have the medical equipment that would prevent a lot of these people from being flown off? And again, I referred to the good Dr. Warcup, that he's doing everything possible and what's right for the folks that are brought in. I have investigated hundreds and hundreds of fatalities. Everybody is very upset about this last fatality, but we don't have the final information as to what caused the crash. We're all jumping to conclusions. Everybody knows, and it may be the guy crossed the center line and was struck by a car coming the other way, and it may be just as simple as that. But were there environmental factors? Were there alcohol factors? The report isn't even complete yet. With that said, and going into the data end of it, I wrote a letter to the Times a couple days prior to the fatality, and the number one suggestion that I had made at that particular moment, and sadly, because of technical difficulties, the letter I don't believe has appeared, but I've given it to Ms. Bacon and some of the other members. As I understand the numbers, 10 to 12 people are 10 to 12 crashes of every summer are related to people riding double, and double crashes are always more severe. They generate in just the nature of the crash itself. I've seen everything from people unable to physically make a right-hand turn, cross the center line, get hit by a car. I watched, I investigated one where the young lady who was a passenger on a double was trying to take a selfie, and they went across the double yellow line, missed the car, hit a stone wall, and ended up into somebody's field, and they were hurt pretty badly as a result of that. And again, I'm not an attorney. I'm going to end on this note. The licensing of the moped riders is governed under Rhode Island General Law 31-10.1. Well, that particular statute extends to -2, -3, -4, etc., right on down the line, -6 or 7. If you go to 31-10.1-2, there is a provision that says that no motorcycle rider with a permit, unless they have a full license, is allowed to carry a passenger. Now, the top of the title is special licenses for motorcycles, motor scooters, and other motor-driven cycles. It's my personal opinion that this particular statute should apply to mopeds, because it says on top for the motor scooters. I am rebuked by a couple of people who looked at it and says, because it only says motorcycles, not motor scooters in the paragraph, that unless you have a full motorcycle license, you shouldn't be able to carry a passenger on a moped until you have a motorcycle endorsement. And if it was up to me, and believe me, it's not, and this is not a legal opinion, I would be enforcing this right along. I have to actually apologize because I should have been enforcing this when I was there. And the fight needs to be taken initially to the traffic tribunal, where that would hear this and then make the initial decision and start the court battle from there. Thank you. If anybody has technical questions on any of these accidents that have occurred, please let me know. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. I'd just like to refer all of our attendees to look up Alan's letter in the Block Island Times, which had a number of, I thought, very sound suggestions. If you want to contact me directly, I can share that, but it is out in the public domain. We will move on now to Thea, please. Thea Monje is the manager of the Beachcomber, and also her father was captain of the rescue squad for many years. She's a concerned citizen. Her brother has been working on the rescue squad. She's written very eloquently about the impact of trauma on our volunteer first responders. Thanks, Thea, for joining us.
Hi, Sarah. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Again, I'm 23 years old, and I'm well aware that this discussion has been happening for like double my age. It's a tale as old as time. Everybody knows about it. Again, there's a lot I don't know, but there's a lot that I do know, and I hope that my outlook can be helpful today. Young people on Block Island want to see change. If I read the PDF document of all the letters that were sent to the town council before their meeting on Sunday, and I was thrilled to see dozens of my friends who I didn't think even were passionate about this speaking up and writing letters, showing their concern about this issue. I'd like to second what Lisa Sprague has said time after time, is that all moped accidents on Block Island are 100% preventable. There is no reason why we should continue to have these season after season. And I think that the goal of all of these conversations needs to be harm reduction. And in my opinion, they all need to be centered on the implementation of preventative safety measures, which unfortunately are all the enemy of profit. So I think that we as a group need to just really look at tangible things that we can do. So, I mean, if we look at the information given to us by Kirk Littlefield and Tracy Fredericks, the fire captain and rescue captain respectively, Kirk mentioned last Sunday that of the 43 moped accidents that had occurred at the time, 17 of them had involved riders under the age of 25. That's 39% of the calls. So there would have been only 27 calls if the mopeds were not rented to individuals under the age of 25. At that meeting, we also received stats that 11 of the 43 were double occupied mopeds, as Al said. And while I don't know the overlap of riders under 25 and double occupancy, if we said that 39% or 4 of those accidents were double occupancy and under the age of 25, we could subtract 7 accidents from the initial figure, which would bring us down to 20 rescue calls, divided by 2 and less. So again, it's so hard for me to understand why we aren't listening to the medical professionals directly. Kirk and Tracy mentioned that the injuries sustained on mopeds would be minimized if riders were wearing closed-toe shoes, proper eyewear, and helmets. I would suggest that these preventative safety measures be made obligatory and punishable if not followed for the duration of the rental to the moped operator and to the individual on the moped. And again, this isn't baseless information. The Marine Corps Safety and Force Preservation did a study regarding motorcycle personal protective equipment and effectiveness. And they found that wearing any type of boot provides a 53% reduction in risk of any foot or ankle injury and a 73% reduction in risk of an open wound injury. And on my drive home to get back to my computer for this meeting, I saw like 3 different people on mopeds and flip-flops. So we have to ask ourselves, like, why are these things happening? Like, if the moped operators, again, I'm young and I'm not in charge of a moped operational business, but I know that I can look up and find government-funded studies that tell us that we can do very simple things to prevent people from getting injured and dying on these rescue calls, which shouldn't happen in the first place. And I also think, I know that this is supposed to be a conversation about pets, but I think that we'd really be doing a disservice to ourselves to not mention that we did have a fatality the week before last that involved a car. And I think that everyone that I've brought this up to has agreed that we should raise the driving age for non-Block Island residents to 18 and annually render null and void the privileges of all provisional driver's licenses for non-Block Island residents from May 15th to October 1st. This is not an area of the world where anybody should be learning how to drive in the middle of the summer. It's not safe. It's not responsible. And I'm just going to finish by saying that any provision that is not a preventative safety measure is a decision to protect profits over community safety. So this is including but not limited to hiring an onslaught of state police officers to come out, because if somebody is cited once they're on the moped, they've already gone too far. So these renters need to be held to the highest standard considering what's at risk here, and any traffic infraction on a moped supports the argument that having a driver's license alone is not enough to garner faultless operation of a moped on Block Island, especially with minimal training. And just in response to what the chief said, I really do agree with most everything he said, but I really think that our conversation shouldn't be rooted around the demographics of the visitors that we have here, because no matter what demographic of a visitor that we have coming to Block Island, it is our job as a community to do what we can to protect them. It is not our job to judge who comes here. It is not our responsibility to say who should be here, who shouldn't be here, who has the right to be here. Everybody should be welcome to come to Block Island. That is the type of community that we are. We open our doors to people that want to be here. And it is not our job to say who we want to protect, and we want to protect families, or we want to protect this group of people. We need to protect everybody that comes here. And in my opinion, the easiest way to do that, to ensure that our EMTs and our doctors and our police force isn't taxed, is to, in my opinion, ban mopeds entirely. If we have the ability to bring this number down to zero, the fact that I could even bring up a conversation that says, well, what do we think an acceptable number of deaths is? What's an acceptable number of maiming? What's an acceptable number of injury? Those aren't the sort of conversations we should be having. We want to be having the conversations that say, us as young people want to see ethically responsible businesses on Block Island in the future. And that means doing everything possible to minimize injury so that we can welcome whoever wants to come here from all around the world to see Block Island, which again is, it's the best place on earth. And I think that we should open the doors and make sure that people don't leave in body bags. That's it.
Thank you so much, Thea. You are inspiring and you make a lot of really good points. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to a veteran business owner on this island, Gail Hall. Thank you for joining this discussion and sharing your perspective as a longtime real estate agent and community member on how you see mopeds and Block Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone who's on the panel and attending. I think this is incredible. It's a great way to get this moving. As Sven said, their movements get started with people, and this is happening. I wanted to time myself, as a business owner, oddly enough, I've been in real estate for 35 years. My first winter on the island was in 1984, and I clearly remember the battle, and clearly remember Lisa Norris, so many people really working hard to try to solve the problem then, which is still a problem today. I did reach out to other broker owners in the real estate business here on the island, and just curious as to what everyone else was thinking, what kind of feedback they were getting from their customers and clients. And we negotiate as a living, so in the form of negotiation, a lot came back with age limits. Actually came back with the thought of, if we have to negotiate with the owners of these businesses, then do so with age limits. The one person per moped, just more regulations, helmets, footwear, all these things that have been discussed so far. I personally wish and hope that we can put a movement together so that either these vehicles are created, we have a different type of vehicle that would then require a motorcycle license. So we would alleviate all these accidents because people would not need training. I don't understand why there isn't more conversation about how the town allows all the moped training to go on a town road. I think that's a discussion that is not being had enough. And I believe if a business owner does not prepare their business, then they shouldn't be allowed to have the business. I don't understand that. To me, it's like if a restaurant doesn't have enough tables and it's a sunny day, you then move all your tables out into the sidewalk, which then causes pedestrians to have to move out into the street. And then it's public safety issues. And it may be an odd analogy, but it's just something I think of. I also think of a carnival ride where, as Vin said, it was like a carnival this summer. And if you have a ride that's that destructive, it gets shut down. We have to do something about this. I believe what Chief Carlone said was spot on. The island was not designed for this type of traffic. And we have to consider what causes the greatest amount of accidents. And if that is mopeds, then those numbers have to be reduced or the type of vehicle replaced with something safer and something that's licensed. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. I think the peace and quiet and enjoyment of the island has changed tremendously. And we have all the offices have had families indicate that they're nervous, they're worried, they're concerned for their safety. So I think there's my 3 minutes.
Thank you, Gail. I have gotten emails from people who saw the full page ad in the Block Island Times who are renters on the island who said they're never coming back because they don't feel it's safe anymore for their young children. I also know of longtime residents who are very seriously on the verge of selling their homes because the tone of the island has changed so much. Can you speak any more from your sector to what you're hearing from your clients, either people who are selling or renters?
Just broadly, concern. I haven't had anyone directly say to me, I'm moving out, other than my husband, who was raised here. He's an original descendant of the island and he's ready to move on. He's had enough. Whether, he won't, we won't, we don't want to, but it's an example of how upset people are. His sister, she's extremely concerned with what's going on here. Their whole family is. It's shocking to watch such great change. I mean, the only constant thing in life is change, but it's shocking to see this type of change. But as far as answering your question directly, there is just everyone's voice concern. And that's something we all are here to pay attention to, I think. And I thank you for this.
Thank you so much, Gail, for sharing your perspective. All right, Michael Rock is our final panelist. Michael is a creative director and also a professor at Columbia University in their architecture, planning, and design departments. Many of you might have read his letter in the Block Island Times last week called A Branding Problem, which really talked about an existential crisis that we as an island are facing right now vis-a-vis our relationship to mopeds and congestion and the demographics we're attracting. I'll leave it to you, Michael. I believe Michael is doing some screen sharing right now. There we go. Michael, it looks like you're muted. Can't hear you.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen? I'm going to try to share again.
There we go. Yes, you can see it.
Okay. So as many of you might have known from the letter I wrote in the paper the other day, in my off-island life, I work as a brand consultant. And in addition to working with cultural and commercial clients, I represent a lot of civic entities. And that's from right now the city of Chicago to districts in Seoul and Bangkok and Beijing, and even a couple of sovereign nations, because serious places take their brands seriously. And for a resort, our brand is our most valuable asset. And when you're talking about civic branding, one of the red flags go up when what we say is what we're promising as the experience here doesn't equal what actually is the lived experience of being here. And I think that that's our problem now, because if you look at, on the left, what the Tourism Council is saying about Block Island, and on the right, what you might experience when you get here, like, just look at these adjectives: pristine, spectacular, rolling, winding, isolated, nearly untouched, tranquil. But are we actually delivering on those promises? And this misalignment between what we're promising and what we are actually delivering is serious, because disappointed visitors are terrible for business here. They're terrible because they feel cheated and they don't come back. But the visitors who come and they love what they find here, mopeds, crowded beaches, craziness going on in the streets, they're the people who will organically promote it through their social media, and it'll become a self-fulfilling identity. And then it doesn't really matter what we say anymore at that point. So to resolve this misalignment between what we're promising and what's actually here, we only have two choices, which is either we have to change what we promise, so promote Block Island as an amusement park or visit Jersey Shore North, or we have to change the experience. And that means that we either have to deal with decongestion, we have to deal with crowd control, we have to deal with vehicle limits and those kind of things. So we can't keep saying one thing and doing another, because ultimately that will hurt us all, and the island will never recover from that. So the thing is that for the past 50 years, we've spent protecting the land of Block Island, because we thought somehow that land preservation would be enough, but it's not enough. We can't just protect the land and neglect the culture. Ultimately, the culture is the spaces that's happening that's not protected, and that's the space that people experience every day. So we have to ask ourselves, where are we headed? Like, what are the decisions we're making now, and where is that leading? And that's where this idea of brand comes in, because a brand is just a plan for a possible future. And it's important that it's possible, in a sense, like, we can't say Block Island is going to be the fashion capital of the world, but we can say that Block Island is going to be an amusement park, and that could very well happen here. Or we could say that Block Island is going to be an eco-resort, and that could very well happen here. We have to decide which future that we're planning for. Because if you don't state what you want, you'll always be what you are. So if we don't actually say what it is we're trying to be, then we're always going to be the way that we are. And so I'm not here to argue that mopeds could be made safer. What I'm arguing is that you can't have Block Island with mopeds, that they're incongruous basically to the experience that we're trying to create here. So I've heard so many people over the time saying that Block Island's always had this kind of lawless, rogue place. It's part of its DNA. And I totally get that. I grew up in Rhode Island. In high school in the 70s, we came out here to go to the Kittens because nobody carded you there, and we'd get drunk and sleep on the beach. I understand what Block Island was like. But I hate to tell you, but basically the 70s were half a century ago, and we're dealing with a paradigm that's basically 50 years old, that basically we're clinging to this 50-year-old business model that somehow we miss basically that all the things that have changed. So think about how much we think about differently than we thought about in the 70s, about how we think about the world and technology and the environment and sustainability and travel and ecotourism and social media and safety and drinking and sex and everything, that basically we totally rethink the way that we think about the world. But we're still living like Block Island is in the 70s somehow, and we haven't managed to change. It's like the rest of the world is streaming music, and we're still like clinging to our 8-track tape or something like that. So ultimately, we have this real opportunity now to change, and I think that we're small enough to where we could do something that would really demonstrate how it can be done, because actually we could make changes here island-wide and really change this place in a really meaningful way. And so on this point, I'd like to really specifically call on the operators and John and Blake and everybody else, because this is this historic opportunity for change. And instead of threatening your own town with crippling lawsuits in order to protect this anachronistic cash cow, you have this chance to be visionary, that you could use your know-how and ingenuity and resources to change this disastrous path that we're on. And you could still make your money, for instance, by converting to electric bikes, which are clean and silent, and your names could be as consequential to the history of this island as those names from 50 years ago, and the men and women who put self-interest aside and started to preserve the land here. The citizens of this island are begging you, and are you the men to step up? And if you can't or you won't, you're condemning all of your neighbors to live in the toxic exhaust of your profiteering. So finally, I just want to say thank you to Sarah, because the first rule of branding is that you just have to start somewhere, and you have to just put a stake in the ground and begin. Because if we don't start, that we'll still be having the same discussion in 2040. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That's a lot of fodder, and we'll be talking about every panelist's input moving forward. We have questions, which I'd like to ask. We're getting on in time, and again, I apologize, we started a little late. This is new territory. Zoom webinars were new territory. First question is for Dr. Warcup from Rob Sigmund. And the question is, can you give us any information on the severity of injuries this year compared to previous years? Severity scores. Thank you.
A great question. We don't have that kind of data available. It's something that I've talked with Kira Ernst about, is going back through our 2018, 2019 data, as well as 2020. There's a way for us to quantify it, not in a number system other than a Likert scale, but it's more of a feeling of severity or the types of injuries we're getting. Much more open fractures, a lot of cervical spine injuries, and obviously the more traumatic issues that we run into, which is, you know, a young 20-year-old person needing an aortic bypass graft because of one of the deceleration injuries. These are horrific injuries that you wouldn't want anybody to sustain, and they're sustaining them in their early 20s due to moped accidents. So the ones that we've had have been pretty serious, and I haven't gotten the flavor from the rest of our team that they've been as serious as often as we have experienced this year.
If I may, Dr. Warcup, follow on that. I'm curious whether everyone who's been in a moped accident gets a breathalyzer test, or rather alcohol levels tested in their bloodstream.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that Mr. Davis was bringing up is sometimes data can be used against you, in the sense that not all things that are important get tracked. I don't think breathalyzers are done at the onset of renting the moped, nor are they done at the end of turning the moped back in. We do request some breathalyzers based on head injuries to see if what we're dealing with is a head injury creating confusion, or is it alcohol related creating the confusion, but it's not a standard. We do it based on our need to interpret what's happening.
Sarah, you need probable cause for a police officer to administer a breathalyzer test. You just can't hand them out arbitrarily.
I understand that part, but my point is that those are data points that would inform whether or not, if you're going to use the environmental conditions, acceptable. I don't think you were implying this, but it had a feeling that Thea brought up, which is, what's an acceptable rate of maiming? What's an acceptable rate of injury before we say we have an anomaly?
Well, I agree with you, doctor. It's just a matter of, the private person can do it. The private companies can do it. You can do it for your medical end of it. You can't give the police that information. I understand all of that. Just remember that in 2015, there was a 40-year-old woman that fell off a bike and got killed that no one has ever mentioned since. You know, do we start breathalyzing the 40-year-old women on a three-wheel bike before they go down the hill on out by the North Light? You can't be arbitrary. There has to be some sort of...
I don't think it has to be arbitrary. You could say for all moped owners, all rental car owners, things of that nature. So again, this is where data sometimes can be used. It can be used to say that you're being arbitrary. I'm just talking that we don't even know the capacity and the emotional, or the, let's just say, capacity of an individual that's renting a moped. I don't think they use any type of tool to gauge that, other than, can you honk the horn and hit the brake correctly?
Like I said, as long as it's not a police officer doing it, you guys can do whatever you want.
Alan, it's my understanding that it's unconstitutional in the state of Rhode Island to do a breathalyzer without cause. Is that correct?
Well, the breathalyzer is a confirmatory test. You need to get through a lot of other things before a police officer can have you legally, before legally ask you to take a breathalyzer test.
Sarah, if I can say, since we started a lot of these discussions in the last 2 weeks, one of the moped operators has purchased and is using a breathalyzer test when he is a candidate, and they have turned, take it for what it's worth, but an operator, or at least some operators are using them now. A little bit strategically, but they've never had them before. And so that is a step in a direction.
Thank you, Sven. I have a question for both, likely for both Sven and Chief Carlone. Chief Carlone, I'm going to unmute you right now. The question is from Merrill Kessler. Can we add large signage at Ferry and make announcements alerting visitors to our zero tolerance policy regarding speed and DUI? Chief Carlone, would you like to address that first?
R6.
There we go. We just got you on unmute. So if you had said something, please repeat. Thank you, Vin.
Sorry, he's got to press *6 to talk.
If you could press *6. Wonderful. There you are.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Signage out here is very important. There's private property concerns, of course, so you have to get permission. And signage has been something that is really not liked out here. So when we put the signs, Al Davis and I, all on the serious corners around town, I actually got in trouble for it. We just did it because I have to go look at these accidents. They're terrible. People are dying. People are, you know, it's awful. So I put it out there, and they said, "What are you, the DMV?" That's what I got from that. But it corrected it. Look at all the signs at the shop corners. Al Davis did that with me, and I really appreciate that. So signs out here, everybody hates signs. Of course we need signs. People need direction. It's a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
Every place that, just so you know,
Of course,
that,
like for instance,
sorry,
like,
Chief.
hang on for 1 second. Just the skateboarding I asked them to put one sign up, no skateboarding in the town. 80% of people will obey the signs. So I have police officers chasing people all day long, skateboarding, wasting time. One sign may have helped the problem, but out here they hate signs, and that is part of the problem. So I firmly believe in signs. It solves 80% of the problem.
Mm-hmm. Sven, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, let me, I think that it depends a lot on the type of signs. I'm going to give you examples. Chief mentioned about the road signs. There's no question that the Chevron signs everybody sees, and I think everybody really cautions going around those turns, etc. But on a more recent basis, with the mask program, the town printed signs. They were talking about social distancing, wearing masks, and washing, cleaning your hands. They were put up around town. They were, you see some right by the ferry. They're right by Four Corners or Bridgegate Square. They are a little bit like those election type signs, you know, the stake into the ground. And then a week and a half ago, I physically, along with one or two other people, put up the orange signs in town. And if you've seen those, they basically are about masks. There's one as you get off the ferry. There's one sort of near the Harbor Church, and then a couple around and about. And I think the reception of those has been very, very positive. They're orange and black, and I won't use the words graphically nice because they're a DOT type sign, but they work. And so I think the answer is there's always that balance between too much signage. When do you get too much so nobody reads anything? When you use the signage? But I think that that signage in the right place, like the chief said, some of it's on private property, so we have to get those businesses to agree. Some it's on public property. but I think signage is fine and more than accepted, much like those orange and black signs or cans distance and mask signs.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so all the like bureaucracy and legality of signage can, aside, Dr. Warcup, can I ask you a question? If you're on the line there?
Sure.
Where? There he is. If I were to ask you, if I gave you the ability to instate 2 rules as a medical professional to lower the rate of moped accidents on Block Island, what would those 2 items be? What would your 2 highest recommendations be?
I think certainly would be raising the age to
And what would you
25.
be? 25?
25. I
Great.
think when you talk about the capacity of people to understand what it is that they're doing and understanding the ramifications of what they're doing, I think our society has made it quite clear, both in literature and in other ways, that the brain isn't quite developed yet. So I think 25 years of age would be one way for sure. And I think closed-toed shoes would probably be a second to help cut down on some really unnecessary injuries.
Great.
Thank you for that. I have a few other questions. This might be for Sven and Chief Carlone. This is from Carrie Johnson, Harbor Church. Supposedly there's a ban on High Street for mopeds. I live at Harbor Church, so I have a clear view of the street. Yesterday I saw 5 separate mopeds heading up High Street. How can this be prevented, and who is responsible for doing so? Is there a ban on High Street for mopeds, Sven and Chief Carlone, right now? That's not my understanding.
I don't know if the chief wants to go. I'll say there's not a ban on mopeds. It is significantly, and there's private mopeds that live there, so they are accessing that road. It is, and I think it was discussed before, Alan discussed it, it is a point of major, I'll call it accidents or conflicts, because people go up High Street. Many GPS locators say the fastest way to get to the either the stairs or to the lighthouse is sort of going up High Street and then on a dirt road. You know, they're not allowed on the dirt road, so then people turn around, come down High Street, and as they're exiting Weldon's Way, it becomes a pretty bad intersection. So, for example, the police chief got the moped operators to hire the security, we'll call them security guards, but a security guard that stands at the corner of Weldon's Way and High Street, and the security guards report to the chief and are paid for by the moped operators, and their sole job is to redirect folks when they want to go up High Street, and then they direct them down or basically towards Spring Street. So the chief has figured out a way to handle this. Very clearly, it's an issue because High Street ends in dirt roads. So that becomes then a turnaround, which has multiple places of issue. Does that help you?
Sven, could I ask you a question? So I live at the top of High Street, and this morning on my drive down to work at about 10:15, I was met with a moped coming up in the other lane, and there was no security officer in front of the bike shop at the bottom of High Street in Weldon's Way.
You're
and there
correct.
was no sign. So
you're correct. I should have
so
said
I remember last year, I think it was last year, it could have been the year before, there was a holographic sign at the base of High Street at the corner of Weldon's Way that said no mopeds. It was in the middle of the road, and I don't know if Vin, I don't know if you have that sign, but I noticed as a person that lives on High Street, that made a massive difference in the congestion of mopeds going up and down the road, was just having that signage there, because there isn't an employee, a security guard there all the time.
And thank you for the correction, Thea. I should have said it. It was, this security guard is there on the weekends and extended to the weekends, but you're exactly right. In the weekdays, they are not there. So a signage.
And we've definitely incurred, we have horrible moped accidents Monday through Thursday as well. So I think that consistency for these sort of things needs to happen. So if we could get that sign out like tomorrow morning at the base of High Street, I don't think that it caused any issues for anybody. It was a very small sign, kind of like the ones that are in the middle of the crosswalks. And that made a great difference without even having an employee or a security guard there.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Just scrolling through other questions here. First of all, Chief Carlone, would you like to address the signage issue on DUI and zero tolerance? It's my understanding that your policy, it will now be zero tolerance, supplemented by the state troopers who are coming on weekends. Is that correct? Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Chief, are you there? There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Well, with respect to going up High Street, first of all, anyone traversing up High Street in a motor vehicle that's registered is allowed to do so. So we are just discouraging them because we don't want them to get hurt. We want to turn them around. So we cannot prohibit them from doing that. Here's what needs to happen. We need to have maps that people can take with the mopeds that are responsible. Show them the map, maybe tour guides. They could tell us, we're going up here right now. We've done this to try to prevent accidents, but they could actually do whatever they want to do. You understand that? So that security guard is doing a good job, but anybody could go up there anytime they want. It's a legal road in Rhode Island. And the turnaround provides problems, obviously. There could be another accident. So really, we could be better organized to provide maps for people to go on tours with the mopeds.
Well, certainly the idea of a specific app that developed by the operators with maps and code of conduct, etc., that cannot be accessed when you're in motion so as not to encourage more cell phone use while driving. That is one that has come up. Chief, while you are unmuted, I've just been made aware by Doug Michelle, former council member, that there is in fact a law in place preventing open-toed shoes. So it doesn't seem as if there's any enforcement of violations of that law. This is a question for both Chief Carlone and Sven Risom, because it's really up to the town to get the operators to enforce that law. Again, I lament the fact that Johnny Leone was unable to join us at the last minute because, of course, we would want to address this with him. But we will do that at a later date. So I leave this to you, Chief Sven, to address right now. Thank you.
Well, open-toe shoes is a problem because you're risking your own safety. What's more important to me is the safety of people trying to walk here, residents here. I think about the kids that we have in the high school, which we spend in the grade school. We spend a great amount of time in the wintertime. We're at the school all the time. I think about the safety of everything I do. I think about them walking or riding their bike. That's my litmus test for this island, because our kids are what's most important to me and my staff. Not to say everyone else isn't not important, but in other words, if you want to ride around with open-toed shoes and risk yourself, I think more about our kids on their bicycles. Mm-hmm. There are much more important things than this, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. We have to make this safe for our children to drive around. I have a granddaughter.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
That's what we have to think
keep
about.
This moving. Sven, would you like to address that? How is
just real quickly,
not making sure the operators enforce that law?
Well, so enforcement is with the chief. He said this before, and so I think to Doug Michelle's point is been brought up, and I don't want to get way down a road, but enforcement is handled by the police department and chief. And I think there's areas that the town council can help reinforce that. And to Dr. Warcup's point, he's brought this up a couple of times. We're all yes, is the agreement that closed-toed shoes are a real nightmare, because what really happens is, and Dr. Warcup can help on it, but what really happens is people put their feet down even as they're slowing down, and suddenly their flip-flop or the open-toed shoes get scratched, so they then jerk up their foot as a reaction, which then throws the weight off the bike, which then drops the bike. So it's not just about, the closed-toed shoes, it's really the reaction that happens when there's a road rash. So it's a big subject, and hopefully we can get better enforcement on that and a few other things. But as the chief said, they have 4 policemen, have a lot of responsibilities.
Can I ask a question to Lisa Sprague if she's on the line?
Go ahead, I'm here, Thea.
Lisa, compared to moped accidents, how much of a risk do you think that, how risky do you think it is to be on a moped versus how risky it is to just walk down the street or to be on a bike? Would you say that it's much more dangerous to be on a moped, or it's more dangerous to be just walking around?
Well, I kind of work under the assumption that people who are walking know how to walk, and people who ride bicycles generally don't get on them without knowing how to ride them.
Right.
But for some reason, they think it's okay to get on a motorized 2-wheel conveyance when they haven't been on a 2-wheeled vehicle perhaps in decades.
So statistically, it would probably improve the safety of island kids and islanders generally if they weren't having the risk of somebody that doesn't know what they're doing on a moped driving past them.
I think that's kind of a no-brainer, Thea.
Okay, just confirming.
Okay, I've got a question potentially for a lawyer. We don't have a lawyer on the panel right now. Alan Davis, you might have insight into this. Chief Carlone, you might have insight into this. There's a question about whether we can ask for consent in the moped agreement for intoxication tests should an accident occur. If anyone on this call feels qualified to answer that, the panelists rather speak up. Otherwise, we will shelve it for another discussion.
We've made a couple of drunk driving arrests on Block Island for people on mopeds. I don't have any trouble making the arrest, but I'm gonna follow, the laws when it comes to making the arrest, and it starts with probable cause.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have probable cause, not making an arrest. Why I'm not going to open myself up to being charged with making a false arrest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I made 400 or 500 drunk driving arrests in my career. I know how to make one.
Mm-hmm.
We've done it on Block Island. We charged the young man from the Jeep crash with DUI that killed his friend out on by the Painted Rock.
Mm-hmm.
We do it,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it starts with probable cause.
Yeah, I mean, this really is a question, I believe, for a lawyer when you're designing a contract between a renter and a moped agency, but it is something we will pursue. I have another question, and this might be for Sven, but I direct it to Sven. Is there a precedent by which other communities have banned dangerous vehicles from their towns? Sven, on your time at town council, I'm assuming town council has researched other communities. Can you address this?
There are examples, there are examples of a number of things that communities have done that I think this group, per my earliest comments, hopefully forms into a group that really starts to do research, get data, facts. And I'll give you some examples of actions that were taken. So in another island community, they allowed moped operators to trade in 4 moped licenses for a car. And so they significantly reduced the number of mopeds. They did increase cars, got it, but we all just talked about safety. And that was an interesting and really interesting way to act. Banning starts to become a very difficult discussion when you are dealing with state and federal legislative issues. And so there's sort of, over time and coordinated activities for the town, I think, quote unquote, anything's possible. But I think it takes different roads depending on the conditions. And for Block Island and mopeds, unfortunately, as we talked many times tonight, this is a state, a legislative, a federal discussion, federal court discussion. So I just want to caution everybody that it's a process. A little bit like Al talked about with the police, this has got to be a process that we work towards. So to your answer, there's ways to solve, there are ways to swap, there are ways to reduce down the number with different strategies. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Sven. I want to call on Doug Michelle, who's on this call. Perhaps Doug, who was on town council in the 90s and very involved in the early legal battles with mopeds, can give our attendees some context as to why that federal ruling was so restrictive. Doug, I'm going to unmute you here. If you would please speak to that. Thank you. Doug, are you there? Oh, I don't see him anymore. He was just there. Okay, well, we're going to return to him. Oh, here he is. I'm sorry. My bad. Please press *6, Doug. Thank you. Doug, if you could just press *6 and then we can hear. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. You can hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Doug.
Can you please repeat the question? I was trying to reconnect. I didn't know I was still connected.
Yes, there are a number of questions about how restrictive the federal ruling is for town to regulate and even ban mopeds. There's a lot of discussion in the chat section about just banning them. And since you were part of the moped negotiations in the 90s on the town council and very involved in the legal action at that time, I wondered if you could speak to just how restrictive the federal ruling was and negotiations around that time, because perhaps Sven can't speak to legal issues right now. And I know that you have context in this regard. Again, a lot of people are wondering, why can't we just ban the mopeds?
Well, it came about our legislation is given to us by the state of Rhode Island, not the federal government. I assume what you're talking about, the federal, was when we went to court and got that case settled.
Yes.
I mean, the state giveth and the state taketh away. Towns really can't do anything in a state unless the state specifically gives them the power to regulate anything or tax, no matter what it is. For many years, and Lisa will attest to this, she went up to the State House. I don't know how many times you went up there, testified before hearings and got nowhere. It took, I don't know what year it was, 83, 84, for the town to have a financial town meeting and vote to secede from the state of Rhode Island to finally get the state's attention. And what came out of that was our present moped ordinance. And at the time, each operator was allowed 50 mopeds, and all the parameters of renting, insurance that is required, certain things were mandated in the state legislation. And the town has to stay within that state legislation. What happened to us is we came to a crisis in 1994. We came back. Dr. Peter Broussard handed in his resignation, and the mopeds were his biggest reason. From 1984 to 1974, we have police statistics. There were something like 880 injuries from moped accidents. I don't know if I have the numbers right here. And so we drew legislation up, and we said over a period of 2 years, next year we changed our ordinance because we were allowed to. And we said, next year you're going to be allowed to rent 40. And the year after that, you're going to be allowed to rent 30. And after that, the town can reevaluate and decide what's going to happen. In those first years after that happened, we got sued for $78 million, both as counselors and individually. And that took a couple of years. We finally prevailed, and Kim Gaffett led discussions which came to a compromise of 34 mopeds per rental agency. And at the same time, the Orr Boat Basin had a agency, and they dropped out. So they abandoned their license. So then we were set with that. And for a while, the mopeds, the accidents stayed down. And then, as you can see, they started climbing up again. And at some point, the moped operators said, we'll get some safer bikes. We'll get ones with wider tires. The thin tires are a problem. We worked with them. But every time you wanted to put a helmet law or a eye protection law, you went to court, and you had to go to the legislature. And the Speaker of the House, John Harwood, we were up there during our court case, and the moped operators were up there. And one day he just said, I've had it with all of you. Go away, settle it yourself, or I'll probably do something that nobody likes. So that's when that agreement came to settle for 34. It's very difficult to change because there's limits, very limited by what you can do because of the enabling legislation from the state of Rhode Island. But what you're trying to do is safety thing. But I think what's happening now, as I understood it back in the day, the mopeds had governors, and they were set at 25 miles an hour. These days, most mopeds that I end up following on a straightaway, 2 people on a moped will do 30 plus miles per hour. I think one of the safest things that could be done would be to legislate that governors on mopeds will be set at 25 miles an hour. So that's the island speed limit. But you go 30, 35 miles an hour, that 10 miles an hour makes a big difference if you don't know what you're doing. And what I would do as a penalty, I would say if the police caught a moped doing 30 miles an hour, I'd take that for the season. Take it out of production. Say, we told you to put the governors on these. You did not listen to us. You've lost the moped for the year. I think it's very simple. It comes down to that. I don't know if there's any other questions you have for me, but it's never been easy. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know, Lisa, I don't know how many times you went upstate. We went upstate, and they're like, they don't always see our point of view. I'll put it that way. I can't hear you now.
Sorry. Thank you, Doug. That's really, really helpful context. So it sounds to me if a ban were to be pursued, it would need to go through the state legislature. I have a question for Sven. I was told by Aldo's that last year they bought 15 e-bikes, and town said you need to get each of the e-bikes registered at the Rhode Island DMV. And they went to the Rhode Island DMV, and the Rhode Island DMV had no mechanism to register e-bikes for rental purposes. So the e-bikes sat unused. I ask this question because many of us, including myself, want to see an eventual, significant portion of every fleet, if not the entire fleets of motorized rental vehicles converted to e-bikes over the long term to reduce CO2 and noise pollution. I understand they're slower and safer as well. In our chats on this Zoom, e-bikes have been raised several times. So could you address this issue, and then Alan Davis, as a follow-on, please speak to this. Thank you.
This is Sven. Couple of thoughts real quickly. One, I don't know the specifics. So on the 15 e-bikes at Aldo's, I don't know the details, so I don't want to get into it, but I will look into it. Second, though, just to make sure, that's not in replacement. That's in addition to the fleet of mopeds. They were not dropping down the number of mopeds, just making sure that was very clear. So I will follow up on it. I'd rather not speak unless I had the facts.
Thank you, Sven. Alan, did you have something to add?
Yes, please. As far as the electric bikes go, they operate entirely different than a gas-powered moped. The acceleration rates and the braking rates of an electric bike are, if you've never ridden on one, it's going to increase the accidents and the injuries dramatically through something called whiskey throttle, which is when you take off and you can't hold on, so you grip tighter, and the moped goes faster because you're actually pulling on the. Highly recommend stay away from the electric mopeds. Stay away from the go-karts because they're going to roll over going up and down these hills, and stay away from the three-wheeled mopeds that they have in Newport. I investigated recently a crash involving that particular type of vehicle. Those things have a roll propensity that is right on the borderline of you'll never get around a curve. They are very dangerous, much more dangerous than the actual moped that we're dealing with now. The mopeds that are currently on the island, the moped companies going back to 15 or 16, and I don't know whether this has changed or not, they reduced the acceleration rate of excuse me, they started buying mopeds that had a slower acceleration rate, which has almost eliminated the whiskey throttle crash. And it's like, that's generally a single moped. The moped takes off. Someone's trying to hold on because, you know, they weren't on the moped the right way. I wish I could share some of the information that I have on some private investigations that I've done. I don't own the information to be able to share it, but trust me, the electric mopeds will hurt more people than the current gas mopeds will.
But Alan, just to clarify, we're talking about e-bikes. I think there is a range in this technology and a real range of products.
You still have to have enough power to be able to get one or two people that are on that moped up a hill, around the corner, do whatever. It's an entirely different ride, and listen, you guys do what you want, but when they start crashing and people falling over and they don't know how to stop them because they stop entirely different than a regular handbrake might be used to.
Question?
Sure.
Are we talking about like motorized bicycles, or like I'm thinking about like jump bikes like there were in Providence? Are you talking about like jump bikes or like pedal assisted bikes, or like anything between that?
Any electric vehicle, from Tesla's electric cars, those things go, the electric cars accelerate 3 times faster than a gas car in some cases. And the bikes and the mopeds do the same thing. And with the people that are not used to that, you're gonna hurt a lot more people than the slower accelerating mopeds.
Well, it's clear that a lot of research that needs to be done on that and many other issues we've discussed tonight. I just want to check in quickly with the panelists. It's 7:54 p.m. and you guys all generously, I see you, Michael, you guys all generously devoted your time. Would you be willing to continue this conversation until 8:15 p.m.? Is that possible? Give a head nod, or
I can't go any later. I've got an appointment at 8, but I could be 15 minutes late.
okay. Lisa, Chief Carlone, I see you're still with us as well. If you could press *6, let us know whether you can carry on till 8:15. I'd be grateful.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. All right, I just have some more questions I'd like to get to. This is likely for Sven and the chief. And the question is, Are we levying the maximum fines already on the books for non-compliance by both moped renters and the moped business operators? Sven, I think that goes to you.
Fines of what? Or for what? And
Well, for example, I know that there is a moped operator who's renting currently from 2 properties, and that is against the agreement with town. That's my example, but I'm asking this on behalf of Rick Barry, who's been on the call. But perhaps, are there fines for violating that rule? Another rule that operators seem to be ignoring based on the most recent iteration of the agreement between town and moped operators is that you do require prominent stickers on both the dirt road and the beeping fines on all mopeds, but only one operator right now features those stickers on their mopeds. So are there fines? How do you hold them accountable? Again, I'm interpreting Rick Barry's question here.
Sure. And I'm going to be very careful how I respond to this. One, I think these have been, both those subjects have been discussed. I actually brought up the location one earlier and the stickers. So both of those are major topics of discussion. Enforcement is with the police department, and the town council is, I don't want to speak for the, this subject is, these subjects are, those 2 specifically are hot topics right now and are being discussed. That's sort of, so the answer is yes, they are being discussed, and let's leave it at that for right now, but that it's, yes.
I see that Alan raised his hand. Alan?
Sarah, back in 2014 and 15, when I was there, when those things first started, we had stickers on all of the mopeds and the helmets and everything else go along with it. The problem was that when the moped and the helmet eventually went out of service, they weren't replaced. As Chief Carlone has pointed out, you know, I was one of those 60-year-old guys, you know, there during the day. I'm not there anymore due to some major health issues. There isn't the manpower, but we went and inspected the mopeds at the start of the season and went through the bucket of helmets to make sure it all had on there. They don't have the manpower, or you know, to get, those are the little things that fall through the cracks. It's typical Block Island sometimes, you know, we did it this year, we didn't do it next year, we won't worry about the year after that. And that's what brings us back to this particular topic year after year after year.
Thank you, Alan. Chief Carlone, do you want to hit *6 and respond to that briefly, please? And then Michael, I want to get back to you. You had your hand raised. Chief Carlone, are you there? *6. Thank you.
Yes, what is the question?
The question was, is town levying fines, maximum fines already on the books for non-compliance by moped renters and moped business operators? The example, so that was asked by Rick Barry. The example I gave is, for example, operators are violating the current agreement with town by not displaying prominent stickers on dirt road and beeping fines. That's something I've surveyed in town, and only one operator is displaying those stickers. Alan Davis just noted that back in 2015, 2016, the police department used to go down at the beginning of every season and check each bike for those stickers. My question to you is, does your department still do that? If not, why not?
You are entirely correct. We get an F for traffic enforcement, F. We have taken people off this island with mental health issues. We have been interactive with businesses. We've solved crimes. We have 3 people or 4 people on the day shift. You are actually, absolutely, we get an F for traffic enforcement. It needs to be a separate division. It's impossible to do 2 things at once. So your callers have identified a problem that I've over and over written plans for this island. It costs money. The good news is the colonel is going to come out here in the next 2 weeks and provide this information.
Thank you very much, Chief. Michael Rock, you had your hand raised earlier. I apologize for the delay.
Sarah, with all due respect, I just want to say that 95% of this conversation has been about how we can accommodate the moped businesses and how we can go and protect the moped riders. But what about the vast majority of people on the island who've never ridden a moped and never rent a moped, but just live here, and the impact on our quality of life and on the culture of this island? It seems like we're all discussing ways of how we can brainstorm ways so that the moped businesses could do better or stay in business or things like that. But what about the whole idea that mopeds in themselves are incompatible to the nature of this place, and that all of this thinking about more regulation and more signs and more stickers is going to do zero in terms of the quality of life here? And this is a quality of life issue, and it's a brand issue for the island. What are we going to have? Why are people coming here? Are they coming here to ride mopeds, or are they coming here to walk the trails and walk the beaches and do all these things? And you can't have both of them. And I just feel like this whole discussion for hours has been all the different ways we can go and help the moped businesses stay in business. Really, we're trying to accommodate them somehow in all the different ways we can accommodate them. But you know, I think there was a survey done not so long ago, and 80% of the people on the island said we shouldn't have mopeds here at all. And that's across ranges, summer people, year-round people, visitors, everything like that. And in fact, in 1999, the Tourism Council did a survey, and the last question of the survey was they asked day trippers and visitors, what would make your experience of Block Island better? The top two answers was less traffic and no mopeds. That was in 1999. And so this is basically we're talking about the life of the island, not how to go and make this one little business profitable for these three guys. It seems like it's insane that we're in this position, I think. And, you know, I'm sorry to be emotional about it, but I just feel like this discussion about the minutia of how to go and you know, make tiny changes around the edge of this problem is not getting that's what the real problem is. And just to go back to the e-bike question, the e-bikes are not the same as e-mopeds. They're not the electric mopeds. Power assist bikes are not the same as that. And, you know, and I think we can't confuse those two. So anyways, I just wanted to make that point that, you know, that we have to talk about the impact on the people who don't ride mopeds as well as the people who ride them and own them.
Thank
Sarah,
you,
can
Michael,
I
for that.
speak up?
Yes, in a sec, I just wanted to respond to that quickly. Those are excellent points. In my quick opinion, I think that we're just probing sort of, you know, a lot of minutia so that some people can just understand it. I just wanted to note something that you and I had privately discussed, which is that you generously offered to lead some Zoom roundtables this fall, facilitating discussions with stakeholders in the community about our identity, about our brand, and what we want for the long term of this island. And I think your comments speak very clearly to the need for a dialogue in phases, a concerted dialogue, and to really dive into that. And I thank you for offering that, and I wanted to put that out there. Sven, do you want to respond?
Yeah, if I can, and I'm trying to follow the chat as well as other vehicles because I'm looking at people's responses. And Michael, not surprisingly, I think there's overwhelming. You hit the nail on the head in your presentation, and I think I go back to my comments in the beginning. If this group can form as a group, it is about what is the Block Island we want and can build and can really capture. I too believe we're spending a lot of time, not just in this call, trust me, I've been on a lot of Zooms lately, about what I'm going to call the marginal differences. You know, 10 mopeds here, 3 this, or, you know, little stuff. And I think that Michael really hit it on the nail about who do we want to be and how do we live to the promise that we all want. 50%, you know, nature conserved land, and then the beach picture you showed, or I can show you lines of people in parking lots waiting to get on, you know, into certain establishments. So I think it's a very critical element for this group as it forms. Mopeds are one issue, and I'm not minimizing, please, but I do think this is a really long-term, how do we find that balance? And it's not a short-term discussion. So I just really compliment Michael in bringing us to that vision, and all of us can work towards. So thank you very much.
I have a quick question that's for Sven, that's come up in a lot of private conversations I've had, and I personally think is a great idea, which is, has town, this is coming from an anonymous attendee, has the town considered a trolley, bus system, jitney, whatever, from the North Light to Southeast Lighthouse and marinas, you know, the other Mohegan Bluffs, etc., as a safe alternate mode of transportation for both day visitors and residents young and old? We have heard rumors that the state of RI has offered this to town and it was dismissed. This may eliminate the need for many to rent mopeds.
The answer is, and I think some people on Zoom right now are smiling a little bit, whether you want to call it a jitney or a bus or a people mover, it has been discussed a lot. The DOT, Rhode Island Public, anyway, the state offer was not really an offer. It was discussed, so the town did not turn anything down. I think this is a great discussion. The real focus has been about New Harbor to Old Harbor specifically, and maybe a stop at the town beach or something, not necessarily covering the whole island, but there is clearly some traffic flow. We've had a lot of meetings about this. And I believe, again, to the discussion earlier, this group could clearly play a role in that. And I do think that this has been a topic, is a topic, and has a lot of passion at the council level. And at another time, we can talk about all the intricacies along the way. But I do think a public transportation process is a very interesting dialogue.
Great. Dr. Warcup, I have a question for you, which you've partially answered. It's from Kristen Nevins. I read that injuries sustained as a result of a moped accident are more in line with injuries from a motorcycle accident and not a bicycle accident. Is this correct? And following up on the data you recited related to injuries treated at the medical center, have you, your staff, or anyone determined if there is an average age of those moped drivers treated for injuries? Again, that speaks to your recommendation for a 25-year-old age limit, but could you address the first part of that question, please?
So the data would suggest that, as I mentioned at the beginning, a 50cc engine can produce 40 to 45 miles per hour. So the velocity of that injury is different than a bicycle. Certainly there are freakish events where you can sustain a head injury, but the percentage of opportunity for more severe injury is definitely existing in a 50cc moped over a bicycle. I don't have an average age of the injuries now. We're going back through the data to look at time of day. We do have that according to our electronic health record, time of day, and we can also look at age stats as well. We do actually have age stats, but I don't think we ever produced a pie chart to see how many are in each bucket. But no, we haven't done that. We are planning to dissect our data in a lot of ways for the town council and to use it as a true north barometer of the data, because we see all the injuries that come in by private vehicle as well by EMS and also walk-ins, and we can give them the data in a consumable way.
Sarah?
Yes, go
Back
ahead.
in Dr. Dack, in 2015, I did that exact study, and it was a 40-year-old female was the most likely to be injured. 40-year-old female.
I would say that I agree with the data. You have the data. I would say that is not a representation of this particular summer. So things may have begun to change, but that is not the demographic that we see. So I will definitely get you some data for that.
I'll forward you my report. You can take a look at it. Again, it covers the years 2013 through 15 or 16.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to get to 2 raised hands and then we're going to close it out, okay? The first question is from Joe Lipscomb. Joe, please press *6. Joe, are you with us? You'll need to press *6 to unmute yourself, Joe. Thank you. Joe, you need to press *6 to unmute yourself. I see you there. I know you're there. Okay, we're going to come back to Joe. I'm going to the second question from Scott Oren. Scott, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Sarah, *6 only works if they're on the phone. If they're on Zoom, they just have to unmute themselves on the. You have to unmute them.
Okay, Scott. We have some feedback from you, Scott.
Yep, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now without feedback?
Yes, thanks so much. Please go ahead.
Yes. So as I wrote in.
Oh, we lost you. Looks like a bad connection, Scott.
This is a total ban, and we've heard all the impediments to that, and because we need state action. The major impediment in my brief investigation seems to be Block Island's Republican State Senator Blake Filippi, who's run unopposed for 3 terms, and he's also a part owner of a moped operator. So as such, of course, he has no interest in a ban. The last election, he received 91% of the votes on Block Island, even though apparently there's even some controversy about his actual residency and most recently, some outrageous statements. So it's interesting, he runs unopposed again this year. If people are serious on Block Island about a moped ban that needs to be taken through the state Senate, why haven't Block Island Democrats, and I think something like 76% of the people on the island voted for Gina Raimondo last election, failed to run an opponent who would support a moped ban? And I guess that would be a question for any of the panelists who live on the island. I just own a house there for the last 10 years and been visiting for the last 30. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Does anyone want to address that? It's a very good point.
Sarah,
Yes,
Sarah,
Lisa, go ahead.
First of all, Blake is from the House of Representatives. He's not a senator. So that's misinformation. And I'm not so sure about the part ownership of a moped business any longer. So those questions need to be researched a little further.
I can confirm that he does own one of the 5 licenses. That's true.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. But he's
And
definitely a representative, not a senator.
And there was a good article written in the Day 2 days ago about this conflict of interest.
Okay. That's all I got.
Okay. I'm going to go back to Joe Lipscomb. Joe, are you with us? If you're on Zoom, you can unmute yourself.
Sorry, sir. You've got to unmute him. He cannot unmute himself as an attendee. Yeah.
I have unmuted him. And I have unmuted him.
There's a legislature meets 1 o'clock till 8 o'clock. You have to leave behind.
Yeah, talking's permitted. I don't know what's happening, Joe. I apologize. Doug Michelle wanted to chime in on Scott Oren's comments. Doug, go ahead. Thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is why somebody from here is very difficult to serve in the legislature, because the legislature meets from January through June into July. They're generally in session from 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock at night. You can't live on Block Island and attend the legislature and work. So you'd have to be almost unemployed. You have to rent a place like an apartment or something on the mainland, and then you lose touch with your community also. So it's very difficult. I mean, the same reason we're missing a lot of tradespeople. It's very hard to work and go to trade school and get your license to be a plumber, electrician. Very hard to do mainland things like that while you're living here. It's not something you can do remotely or over the internet. So I'm sure there are people who would like to do it. We used to have our own representative. Tom Littlefield was the last one we had, but we haven't had our own representative since the 60s. We did have a great lobbyist once, Dick Kiley, who was a member of the legislature for 20 years. We hired him for a number of years, and when he lived on the mainland, and he was excellent up there. He knew who to talk to. He got a lot of work done for us. But that's why it's almost impossible to live here and serve in the legislature.
Thanks a lot for that, Doug. I'm going to try for Joe Lipscomb one last time. Joe? Okay. In closing, we did have a question. I think it'd be a great closing question. You guys can just fire answers. An anonymous attendee said, I'm curious as to what other panelists would answer to Thea's questions. What are your top 2 choices of proposed interventions? So let's go through. We'll start with Lisa.
Have you got me?
Yep, I got you.
Short of a complete ban, a gradual phase out would be my recommendation, to just over 5 years until it was completely abolished. But I do believe that I definitely agree with Michael that we're catering to the businesses rather than to the hundreds of people who have some very strong opinions about this, and trying to find some middle ground. I don't think there's any middle ground. Complete ban.
Thanks,
That's
Lisa.
my 2. Phase out or ban.
Got it. Thank you. Thea? Got to unmute yourself.
There we go. I would second what the doctor said and immediately instate ordinance that forbids anybody from under the age of 25 from being on a moped. And I would second what Lisa says, and I would gradually phase them out, but over 3 years as opposed to 5, 30% per year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Alan?
You got to stop the double riding. Those are the most serious accidents on the mopeds. Aren't going away. You've been battling this since 1986. The court slapped it down hard and fast. They're not going away. So you got to come up with a plan that's going to work for everybody. And it's not going to work for everybody because you just can't legislate perfect and you can't fix stupid. But take get the double people off the mopeds and increase the cost of renting a moped to at least $100 an hour. And that's going to keep your young kids that don't have that money off as of tomorrow.
Thanks, Alan. Sven, can you speak to this in your role?
No, sure. A couple of things. I know you said 2, I may do 3, but 1, I think we need to think about the fact that there are 5 operators. You keep mentioning 1, and I just want to make sure that there are 5 licenses, of which 2 are owned by 1 person. So we need to make sure that we keep thinking about this as a group of businesses. Second thing that I think is the most important that could happen right now is the formation of this group into, I mentioned the Committee with the Great Salt Pond, into an organization that has data, facts, funding, and can really help drive to a point, working with the town and really working together. And the third point, I know you said 2, I really want to go back to Michael. And for everybody on the phone, there are now 130 people roughly, or Zoom. The 2 biggest advertisers for Block Island by leaps and bounds are the Ferry, and if you haven't heard the jingle, I'm sure you have, and Ballard's. And if you haven't heard the concerts and the events, I'm sure you have. They outweigh all branding and all communications. So those are the big ones. The mopeds will come with that formation of the group, the number 2 point. And I think there's a long-term way to phase out, to move this forward. And I really congratulate you, Sarah, and Michael, and everybody. But organization, data, facts, research, funding is going to be the critical part.
Thanks. Dr. Warcup, you've already answered this question, but do you want to modify it?
No, I think that we do have to find pragmatism. I agree with Alan that I think we have a long-term goal, but the short-term goal to keep people from being maimed. There are some short-term solutions that can help us have a better infrastructure and keep our visitors safe.
Mm-hmm. Michael?
The two I would say is it costs $800 to bring a car to Nantucket. How much does it cost, $50 something to bring a car to Block Island? To make it prohibitively expensive for non-residents to bring a car here. And I think there has to be a bond issue that buys out the licenses and converts the business to electric assisted bikes, which can be run by the town as a profitable business. But I think that the only way to get rid of this problem is to get rid of the operators, and that has to be whatever way we have to do it. And I think if you do those two things in terms of the brand, if we say this is a wind-powered island with electric bikes, and it's a place to go where to get away from all of the commercialization and carbon of the mainland, it starts to become a story that we can tell, and that starts to become part of the nature of Block Island again.
Just want to interject. I don't think you meant say get rid of the operators, but get rid of the licenses.
Take the operators out of the business.
Yeah. I hear you. I'm not, call out a hitman. That's not. Gail Hall.
I don't think I could say it any better than Michael Rock just said. And Sean McGarry also brought up the point in the chat about buying out the licenses with a bond initiative. And, I agree with Lisa. I wholeheartedly, I think we have to ban them in any way we can. I think we need to get the governor involved. And I think, as Sven has pointed out, just put this group together into a form that we can make a difference, make something happen. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
I want to note that, anyone who's following the Respect BI email list, we're emailing the governor requesting a temporary ban after last week's fatality, and her staff was invited to join this meeting. I'm not certain whether they have. It looks like we lost Police Chief Carlone. So I'm just going to ask Doug Michelle quickly if you have your top two interventions. Are you still there, Doug? I see you.
Was it star 6?
There you go. Yeah, hi.
It's hard to pick two because I think for safety, you need a package of things and attack many things. You also have things that are prohibited right now, like by state law, not local law, you must wear shoes and shirts or you're not allowed to be rented a moped. So the operator should never be giving mopeds to people who aren't wearing shoes. I don't know what you can say about that. But perhaps it's time, like we did in 94, to do another gradual reduction, just cut them down another number. As far as a ban, the state would not support the ban in the past because they did not want to be seen as putting a business out of business. That'd be very difficult to do. As far as a buyout, that was discussed also back in the late 80s, 90s. The price was absolutely prohibitive. It would probably cost you more than what we just paid for the internet. And there's a downside to that, is this legislation is given to us by the state. We could buy 5 licenses, extinguish them, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, somebody's got an in the legislature, bam, mopeds are allowed to be rented again. We don't control the entire future. But I think there's a lot of things we can do. Enforce the existing ordinances. I think there should be governors on those machines. And as I said, if you find a machine going 30, take it for the season and it doesn't go back on the road again. The other thing, I know there's questions about, people are wondering how many mopeds are actually rented. And I believe this is Paul Riker's system when he was the chief. He got they were allowed 50. He got 50 medallions of a different color for each company. So they had 50 mopeds they could rent. The medallions attached to the license plate. So if a moped broke, they could take that medallion and put it on another moped, and hey, 1 to 50, that's all they got. It's not stick-on plastic numbers, and who knows what they are. And I remember Jack Savoy, when he was first warden, he told me he went by one of the moped operators, well, I will not name, and he looked at him and he says, I can't believe you. He says, you have 2 number 20s in that lot right there. He says, it was basically, politely, he said, how dare you? Something like that might answer a question. Hey, who's really renting that moped? What company is that? And the other thing, you might look at accidents and say companies that have the highest rate of accidents, you can punish them. The safest operator in the past by far was Carrie Todd. She had the best training, the lowest accident rate of any of the moped operators. There are a lot of things you can do. You can't pick 2. You could get to half a dozen, but you got to work it out. We had the support of the state. We had Block Island Health Services. We had the police. We had the Rhode Island Department of Health. We had the doctor. All these people were at our public hearing and made our case, and that's why we prevailed. And if you want to do anything, you've got to start accumulating all these records, all these data, put together a case, whether it's long-term or short-term. That's how you build it. You get the public behind you. You convince the state to stand behind you, and you make your point. And if you make your point properly and with enough data and the right reasons, you will prevail. If you don't, you will fail. And that's the best I can say. And I want to thank you for putting this together. You've done a great job. Great to hear the panelists. Very good to have this discussion going. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Doug. I would just want to add one of Respect to BI's really first calls to action is going to be the town commission. One of the first calls to action for Respect BI is going to be that town commission an independent data analysis of mopeds' impact on the island from a social, economic, and environmental impact. And we do all need a baseline of data in order to reform and intervene and maybe even ban, but we need to start with a baseline of independent, strong data. So I agree with you, Doug, on that point. If I may, I'm going to offer my own interventions, which is 25-year-old minimum ASAP. Contained training areas with a figure 8. This is one of Alan's suggestions for all moped operators. There's room on Weldon's Way. Video trainings with crash statistics for moped renters. Those are my top 3, and really over the long term, conversion of all motorized vehicles to e-bikes for the sustainability of this island. Thank you to my panelists. Thank you for volunteering your time and for being patient with the technical difficulties. Thank you, attendees, for also being patient, for being committed to this cause. We will be in touch soon. I can't tell you when, but soon, with after getting together with a smaller quorum to strategize and go through everything that's been laid out today and also sent privately. We'll be in touch soon with next steps, but I very much thank you for your time. And I think that as a movement, we can make change. And I also promise you that from my own commitment that I will keep pushing this in the fall and the winter and the spring. And my personal goal is to have new safety regulations by ordinance in effect by summer 2021. Okay, everyone, thank you.